Krista Demore Flute, and we are here with another episode of the Oracles of Colonization. We are going to cover three soul wound and its corresponding major arcana card, which is the Empress, or in this case, today's future. And we're going to have this conversation with my friend Melissa, who is my today's future card. And we're both going to introduce ourselves and then get into this conversation. As I said, I'm Angie Kay, or Krista Demore Flute. I'm a Lakota and Cajun scoop survivor. And being a survivor of the 60 scoop is, makes this card, like the soul wound card, a prominent aspect of my life and my healing and my journey. And as Indigenous people, we all have a lot of these soul wounds, intergenerational wounds. And so we're going to get into it today. Melissa?
Yes. Hi. So I am Melissa and I am from the Muskogee Nation. I live in Southeast Alabama on my traditional homelands, which is such a privilege and an honor. I'm really excited to be able to talk about these cards with you today, and especially just the soul wounds, because like you said, as Indigenous people, I think that that is the card that we can all relate to. And I'm excited to talk about today's future and how the two of them correlate, because I feel like it all goes together.
All right, excellent. I'm going to read for people the description of these two cards, and then we'll get into it. All right, so for soul wound, this is the wounds that reverberate throughout generations. These are the wounds which never heal fully. Healing feels painful to the soul wound, as the wound is aggravated every time it is tended to. Healing is lifelong. And I'll read the description for this one too. But I always thought, like, it's important to remember that, these healing journeys, love and light folks want to tell us to take their painful journeys for us a lot of the time. Okay. Almost that. Oh, totally past the page. Okay. All right. Today's future puts the tools of the spiritual into the practical. They know how to feed the tummy and the spirit. They do both as a higher calling. Today's future is full of desires, which they harness through careful cultivation into a harvest that would make the ancestors proud. Be open to see beauty and spirit all around you and pass it forward as they do. You might be on the verge of parenting tomorrow's futures, or carrying news of pregnancy, or new creations and projects. All right. And Melissa, you are my today's future, or Empress card, because like it's always your commitment to gardening and harvesting and being on the land and out on the waters, and doing this with your children and your family. It just, when you share it, it always just, it's beautiful. It speaks to me, and you were my natural selection for this.
Well, I mean, honestly, I feel so thankful. Like, being chosen for this card was really special for me, and it kind of helped me to see myself in a better light. And yeah, I feel just really thankful for my family, and like being able to grow up and be able to like fish and know the land so that I can garden and harvest traditional medicines. I feel like all of these things are such important parts of who we are as Indigenous people. And, it ties back in with healing our soul wounds, and how we do that is oftentimes through our connection with Mother Earth and being able to step into our part in creation and play that role. And it's incredibly healing. So I'm very thankful.
You are very welcome. Yeah, being removed from all that, I know in my journey traveling back that this is like a big part of the healing journey of these soul wounds, and it's difficult, and
It
that
is.
difficulty It is. It comes up in so many ways. Um, I often felt like I just, not just that I didn't have the knowledge, the understandings, the capabilities um, to harvest and garden, and and it was like, but it's so healing when I get past those fears. Well, they're not fears. When I get past those wounds
Yeah, I
and
mean,
dig in.
I really feel like so much of that is what it is. It's wounds. Because, like, when we think of like working with seeds and we think of harvesting, plants and all of these beautiful medicines, it requires us to be hopeful. It requires us to be vulnerable and like to take this chance. Like, you may or may not have a harvest. You may or may not go back to the same, berry patch this year and get the same amount. Like, it requires you to just be hopeful. And I think that's such an important part of healing, is because so many of our soul wounds, they keep us so confined, to the same spot, afraid to venture out, afraid to be hopeful at all. So I think that today's future reminds us to be hopeful that the future is bright and that there's so much to look forward to.
Yeah, yeah. I really do agree with it. And as you were talking about that, I pulled out the seven of drums, but I actually was really thinking, which I think we talked about before, having that connection to these cards, and that it takes time and there is no guarantee how
Exactly.
it's actually going to go and turn out. And that's hard, it's hard, especially when you are dealing with those soul wounds, because you're like, all right, I'm going to dig into this and I'm going to deal with this. But if your harvest isn't all that great and it doesn't turn out all that great that time, it can be so hard,
It can
and
be
it can
so
make you
hard.
feel so much like, I'm too wounded to do this.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
that's not the card I was
understand.
looking for.
I think that so much of the time, like, our soul wounds we just kind of become them. Like, it can be so dark, in that place where you're feeling all
Mhm.
of that pain, that there's not any way for light to come through. I think that it takes vulnerability. Today's future requires vulnerability. It calls us to be vulnerable and to take a chance. And I feel like really that's all we can do. And it goes in terms of really everything, but especially our healing. We have nothing to lose,
You
everything to
you
gain.
know, here's a card that made me think of. It's from the Kaleidodope Tarot, and
Ooh,
it's like a potato plant growing
I
for the
love it.
seven of coins.
I need
Yeah.
that day.
And like, you don't know how well your potatoes are doing till you dig them
Exactly.
up.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
And
sometimes you may
I,
be tempted to want to like dig it in and see, but you can't. You just got to trust that what you planted is doing what it's going to do.
yeah, yeah. And it's hard. And also, I like this card because, potatoes they're a fairly easy plant to grow, really.
Right.
And they are the first plant um, other than roses. I'm amazing with roses. So the first
See, I'm
plant
really not.
I like
Rose
was
plants are
really
hard.
successful. Roses are hard.
Yes, I'm just now learning about roses for real. So really I think they're just kind of picky, like I lots to learn from roses. Like, either you pay attention to me
You
or
have to. Oh, I don't do that with my roses. I haven't had roses in a long time. I used to have a rose garden and I had
oh,
thousands of blooms and made
beautiful.
rose hip jelly and stuff.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
you have to choose the right roses for where you are. And
Yeah.
people often want to choose, like, this is the rose I'm drawn to and I'm in love with, but you've got to choose the roses
It's
designed for where you
important to
are.
know your land, where you're at, and what grows.
Yeah, yeah, it really is. Um, But then I baby them for like, a few weeks when I put them in. And
Yeah.
then they either make it on the land in the climate I've given them or they don't.
I
But
mean, it's
they
a
have.
life cycle. It happens, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. And it can be hard and disappointing. You
Yeah,
know what
you know.
last year, everything I tried to grow from seed did not, none of it, none of it.
I
And
wonder
I
why.
had to get seedlings from other folks. I think it was because we have to start seedlings inside, and
Yeah,
having like no yard or land last year, um, you
made it
know,
hard.
that was inside an apartment, and I think it was like too humid. I don't know what else. They molded.
Oh, I feel it. Yeah, it's hard to like germinate plants inside. You know, I'm thankful. Like I live in a subtropical climate. Like I couldn't even imagine. So cold where you
I
are.
know.
I couldn't do it.
It really can be. Um, you know what? While we're talking about this, and before we carry on, I are you on like something mobile, like a cell phone, or are you on a laptop?
I'm on a cell phone.
Do you want to walk us around and show us your beautiful garden?
I mean,
You'll
you
have to
know,
talk as we do it,
yeah,
so the camera does.
yes.
All
Of
right,
course.
so let's see our Empress's garden.
All right. Okay, so here is the start to my garden. And here, like my kids and I have planted just hundreds of flowers. And this is like my longest garden bed. So lots of things are going to be coming up that haven't come up yet. But these are all beautiful canna lilies. And there's just thousands of flower seeds planted. So all the little green is flower seeds. And there's my greenhouse where all my magic happens. Over here we have squash and cucumbers and zucchini. And don't worry, that's just diatomaceous earth. I do not use pesticides in my garden. I'm gonna walk around here and show you the other side. And these flowers, my little baby planted those in like January, and now they're finally blooming and they're just so beautiful. Here we have beans. This whole fence will just be overtaken with beans and peppers. And here's my bean arch, and my peas are just about ready to start going up it. And yeah, there's a busy little bee. You can see them, but the bees are totes my friends. I love them so much. All right, and I have tomatoes like everywhere. So this morning, my mom counted like 37 tomato plants that we found in my backyard just from like the kids and my birds. And then my prized cabbage, which my mom took all the cabbage leaves for, but that's okay. And my okra and marigolds. And I think that's about all over here. But yeah, my backyard is like my little oasis, a quiet place. Okay, let me figure out how I turn it back around. Okay, there we go. All right.
It is absolutely an amazing yard. It's
Thank you.
gorgeous. Yeah.
I love it.
And
Becky.
this wall here is just
Let me show
wow.
you. All right, let me just show you the wall. Okay. So
Okay.
hold on. Let me show you. All right, so I bought the ivy plants 3 or 4 years ago. I was like 3 of them on the clearance rack at Walmart, and they were poor and pitiful and just looked like they were gonna die. And I'm like, I'm gonna save you. Pretty much every plant in my yard was a clearance plant. That's like the first place I go. And yeah, now I'm just like, I have so much ivy, and anybody that comes over, I'm like, hey, you want some ivy? You know, let me dig you up some so I can share the love. I plant it everywhere. My whole house is going to be like a hobbit house.
I love that. I really
Thank you.
love that. That's
Thank you.
amazing. And it's wonderful, like doing it with your kids. It's so amazing to, as an Indigenous parent, when we get to keep our kids, like it's an amazing relief for all of us.
It's
Um,
so healing.
sometimes or a fight. Yeah, it is so healing. And the things that we get to pass on to them are just so amazing. And yet, we're passing these on to. Oh,
Can you hear me?
I
Ugh.
can.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was having connection issues all of a sudden. But I think I heard what you
Yeah, I was
said,
just.
talking about the like planting with our kids and being able to pass on these things. I think it's so important. I know I drive my children just absolutely wild because I'm like, okay, come on, guys, let's go. Like today, I'm not going to be out here tending the garden on my own. Like I want my children to be out here pulling up the weeds and, making sure that everything is like cared for correctly. Like, I think it's so important to like include them in the whole process. And I think it's important to instill that part of like understanding to them when they're young so that they have better footing in the world, like they'll spend less time trying to figure out their place in creation when they understand,
Yeah.
just simple little things like seedlings, which are really not simple at all. So resilient. They teach us to be resilient and strong. And yeah, I think it's super important.
It is so wonderful. And it's important when we get to pass on these things because we know we're also passing on these soul wounds. Like we don't really have a choice in the matter. They're intergenerational, they're
That's
in our
right.
DNA, they're within the system that we, live under. And when we have other tools to give them, um, it's so important. It lets them start that journey early on.
Absolutely. And it gives them an outlet, like my entire life, like I have always been able to find solace and peace and just like deeper understanding while working with the land or just like being outside in general, like being in the woods, like harvesting cedar first thing in the morning. Like there are so many lessons and teachings that come from our relatives that are non-human, like the wind, the trees, the plants, every single thing carries spirit. And, we are just poor, pitiful little humans. Like, we don't know shit about shit, like we depend on, I personally depend on all of these teachings to like be a better human being.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's a part of our understandings of the world that is really different than European understandings. Is like we're pretty pathetic, animals on this planet. We're
I mean,
so much more dependent on
so much
all of
more.
our other plant and animal relatives than any other
Absolutely.
being on this planet.
I mean, for real,
You
like
know,
they literally tell us everything we need to know.
yeah, and provide everything we need.
Every single
You
thing.
know,
It's wild. It's wild living in a settler state. Like I feel like that's a
yeah,
soul wound that needs talked about. Like, I mean, because that's something that we will never be able to fully heal from living in this settler colonial state. Like that's a constant, every single day wound that we wake up with. And that's exhausting, So
yeah,
and it makes it harder. So many Michis are like detached from culture and tradition and these types of understandings because of freaking settler violence. And yeah, that's
yeah. My birth sister, we were scooped separately, but we found each other, when she was 16 and I was 21. And
oh,
what was like 22? I guess I would have been 22. And you know, those wounds for her were ones that she always struggled to heal. She would have anxiety attacks sometimes practicing culture because, you know, I realized later on, those anxiety attacks were like that soul wound being disturbed. And, you know, when you're wounded and you get hurt, like it has to be opened up and cleaned. And these wounds have to be
Absolutely.
opened up and cleaned so
And it,
often.
you know, it just
And
requires us to be so vulnerable, and that's so hard to do. But like, that is what it requires. It requires
it
us
and
to
it
be leaning on other people, you know, because healing from these types of soul wounds, especially when we're talking about like reclaiming our cultures, like we are dependent upon community, you know, and living in
yeah,
this settler colonial state, we're taught that we don't need anybody, we don't need community, you know, like it's, but we do, because like I said before, we're just poor, pitiful humans. We need each other.
yeah, we really do. And you're right. We are really taught that we shouldn't and we can't. And our wounds often reinforce that because often they
Mm-hmm.
come without, um, often they come from a lack of culture and community and connection.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
it's like to be vulnerable where you're hurt is really hard. But
So
that's the
hard.
thing about doing it, doing that healing with the earth and with the plants is it actually is safe to be vulnerable there.
It is. And that's why I feel like, because I mean, for real, like I'm a badass bitch, okay? But I am a softie. Like I am such a soft shell. Like I will cry, okay? Like not in front of you, but behind your back. Like that's why I love being outside, you know, because like you want to sit under a tree and just like sob and be held and comforted. Like, yes, I do. You know, like, yeah, it provides a safe place to just exist in this poor, pitiful, vulnerable human state that I am in. And I think that's so important.
Mhm.
So important.
Yeah, it really is. Yep. Um, Now you got to grow up in your territory and with your family.
Yes.
Um, did that, so a lot of this was passed down to you as well. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Like, I'm really so lucky, like, and thankful. Like, my family has always been here for as long as, you know, there have been people fishing on these riverbanks and creeks. And, you know, my people have been here. Like, the island that I go to, like, my people have been on the island for thousands of years. Like, I feel like being here on my homelands, being so connected, like, I have just I can never leave, you know, like I'm so deeply rooted here and I'm so thankful for that. I think that there's something just so special about being able to be in your traditional homelands, like where my people were, you know, it's incredibly healing. And my both of my parents, you know, they always like just did their best. Like we had big gardens. Back then I didn't want to be out there doing all of the things. And you know, shelling peas was like the worst day of my life, you know, and it was all summer long. So you can imagine my attitude. But now like I look back and I have such fond memories, you know, of doing all that with my cousins and my aunties, everybody just sitting on the porch with big 5-gallon buckets of peas that we'd picked all day. Like that shit wasn't fun back then, but now I miss it, you know, and I wish I could go back, especially because like so many of my elders aren't here anymore, and what I would do to like be at their heels picking peas again, especially like my grandfather, like he taught me so much. I've learned everything I know is because of my family, you know. I would know nothing without them.
That's so beautiful.
Thank you.
That is. For me, I had to relearn a lot of these things. Um, and it's been a hard journey. Um, but to be able to pass it on to my kids is special and important. And sometimes it's hard because they're, you know, they're kids. They sometimes respond just like you did as a child and are like, ah,
Exactly.
this is the worst.
Yeah, you know, like the
Why do I
girls.
have to do this? Wasn't so much shelling peas for them. A lot of times it was like, you know, being taken to ceremony.
Mhm.
Yeah, being taken to ceremony, being taken out on the land, being taken to protests and lectures
Right.
and
Yeah.
things like that. And it's good to hear, like, you know, that your reactions were no different than theirs were. um, but most of my kids are adults, and I do see in, you know, adulthood this coming back, and this you know, being like, I'm so glad you taught me this, can you re-talk to
Yes.
me about it?
For sure. Now I have a better attitude. I want to listen now. Tell me what I need to know. I feel it. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think as children, like, you know, we don't know anything. Like, still, I'm still a child. Like, I still don't know nothing, but at least now I know that, you know. And I have just a better attitude, you know. I think that just comes with age. I think that, like, my kids, you know, they'll probably get annoyed, have a bad attitude about all the time they had to spend with me in the garden. But when they're older, and they'll understand, you know.
yeah, yeah, they will.
For sure.
They will understand.
I
I
think
mean,
it's
you did.
important.
I think also as kids, like, we don't understand, you know, that some of the things that hurt us and upset us are these generational wounds. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, and so we don't understand the importance of healing these wounds. We think of them as our, you know, belonging to our parents and stuff like that until we're older,
Absolutely. For
and we
sure.
understand.
I definitely
Oh
agree.
no, you can't be playing that right now. It's the volume.
I think as kids, like, we can
Sorry.
see things like ceremony and having to, like, go out and work on the land as like these tedious things, you know, because we don't realize like how important they are to our health and to our well-being as people on the planet, you know. So when we get
Yeah.
older, like, I think it just comes with age and deeper understanding. Like, you know, being out on the land is ceremony, you know, working with plants, it is ceremony. And as human beings, like, we have to have ceremony. It's pivotal for our evolvement as people and as children. Like, we don't realize that. So I think soul wounds, you
Yeah.
know, and children dealing with generational trauma that they don't have a name for, and it's just shows up in, you know, anger, frustration, and, you know, all of these things. I feel like being able to give our children an outlet outside and, like, being a part of Mother Earth and, you know, spending time with nature gives them just so many of the tools that they need to, like, process and heal from those big emotions in a good way.
Yeah. Yeah. It really does. It really does. So we had talked earlier about cards that bring up to us like these understandings of the soul wound and these understandings of today's future or the Empress. And you want to talk about the cards you picked out?
All right, so I picked out, I'll start with the Queen of Wands. She reminds me very much of the Empress. She is absolutely beautiful in every single way, and she is empowering, and she is just absolutely full of, like, gratitude and generosity. And she is like, reminds me always of, like, my place in the community, and that is as a servant. Like, you know, it is my responsibility to take care of my family and of my people, and, you know, to do my role. And she is just a constant reminder, just as the Empress is. I feel like all of the queens really, you know, they make up the Empress,
Mhm.
but the Queen of Wands is especially important to me. I also feel like she is so spiritually in tune. Like, she knows what's up, and I think
Yeah.
it's also so important to also, like, goes back to the Empress, like staying in touch with my part of creation and like Mother Earth. It helps me to be in tune. It helps me to keep balance, which helps me to like be spiritually aware, and so important.
Yeah.
Um,
For me, the queen I chose was the Queen of Swords. And
yes,
for me, I think my connection to her as her part of the Empress really does tie into like the soul wound card in
absolutely.
that yeah, I feel like, she understood these soul wounds, she had these soul wounds, she overcame these soul wounds really literally because she's a Zapatista. Um, and she's lived this Empress like so much and been this Empress. And we know like the Zapatistas, as well as like defending their lands and their sovereignty or their autonomy, like they also do, like they defend their lands for this so they can do this and participate in this in good ways. And also I
Absolutely.
feel like, she's like the one who's like, she's got that weapon. She's going to cut the bullshit out. She's going to just cut all the pains out because she's just done with it. And like, it's her way of protecting like the next generation of empresses to have that space to do that.
I love that. I feel like our two cards that we pick really contrast us so perfectly, because like you are this badass warrior, that's like ready to cut somebody's head off if you have to. And, that always just inspires me so much. I'm like, damn, I want to be you when I grow up.
I want to be you when I grow up. um, you said you're a badass bitch, but you cry real easy. Me too. I do cry really easy, and mostly I am that badass bitch and like strive to be that auntie of weapons
Damn right.
because to me like that is like passion. That is passion to be like I'm I don't care about my hurt anymore. I'm just gonna like fight and protect whatever I can so that like you're not hurt anymore.
Absolutely.
And in some ways, I feel like being that it's easy for me to cry helps me do that. And yeah, it helps me do that.
I'm glad. I'm glad. I think it's so important. I completely agree with everything that you just said. I think that crying, is like, because I wasn't always an easy crier, like I used to just be a stone cold, like I don't cry. And then 2019 happened, and like I cried enough to feel the Gulf of Mexico, like, and it was so healing. And then, our friend Shauna, she shared this teaching with me about water, and like we all know water is so sacred and beautiful, even the water that flows through us. Like our tears are
Yeah.
sacred. And when we cry, like it is ceremony. Like it allows me to really like hold so much compassion for myself, because I hold compassion for the water. Like, how can I not hold compassion for myself when I am water? So that was an eye opener, and so important.
Yeah.
Um,
It is.
so
The teachings about water and connection to tears, it it was so healing for me because I was able to see my tears instead of as a weakness like settlers see them, but I could
exactly.
shift my understanding to them
Yes. Yes, exactly.
as this
It's
like profound.
powerful. I completely agree. I feel like you're kind of breaking up. Can you see me just fine?
I can. Yes,
Okay.
I can see you. The connection sometimes not awesome, but neither is
It's all right.
mine.
Okay.
And yeah, that's his life. We're just a couple of Nietzsche's with not the greatest internet
I
connection.
mean, for real, okay? It's expensive to get that fancy shit that works real
It
good.
is.
For real. Okay. So
It
for
is.
my soul wounds card, I picked the 5 of Cups. You know, because like when you look at this card, I mean, obviously I'm like instantly sad, you know, like he needs to move on, you know, and I feel like so much of our soul wounds are us like really, really, really moving on and like allowing ourselves to heal and be hopeful. Like, because without
Yeah.
hopefulness, like we're just stuck there in this spot of being alone and sad. And like, that's not a place to be, man.
Not. I also chose the Five of Cups. This is my Five of Cups. I do like the traditional Five of Cups too, but we do need to move on. But I think part of why it's so hard for us to move on is we don't validate the hurt and the pain, and other people don't
Exactly.
validate our hurt and our pain. And I think that's super, super important. We need to validate that, like, this shit hurt, like, unbelievably, like, so many weapons through the heart. And, you know, we need to validate that. We need to realize it's not our fault. We need to get rid of, like, that self blame and give ourselves forgiveness. And it's so hard to do.
It is
But
so hard.
I think it's so important. I think a lot of why it's hard to move on and we get stuck there is this society wants us to move on without validation.
And wants to move on without healing. Like settler society
Mhm.
prefers for you just not to speak of your pain. Like something terrible's happened, don't talk about it. You know, you're feeling angry, don't talk
Yeah.
about it. You're sad, don't talk about that either. Sorry, we only allow happy or angry over here. That's it. Like, no, like,
And that's so true. And it's so reinforced when we get asked, we start off conversations, hi, how are you? And you
mhm.
have to say, I'm great,
I'm
I'm
good.
amazing,
Yeah.
I'm
How are
exciting,
you?
or I'm okay, or I'm fine. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm good. And
Yeah.
it's hard. And like the
It's
words come out
toxic
automatically. And
automatically
sometimes I'll be like, yeah, I'm okay. And then I'm like, okay, actually, I'm not.
at all.
It is
Sorry.
so toxic because it
It
just comes
is.
out automatically.
And
It's
it's
like,
just,
I'm okay. And it's,
yeah, we have to like, in
yeah,
order to move on in a good way, and in order to like heal, like we have to talk about the pain that we feel. You know, like if we don't
yeah,
talk about these things, if we don't lean on one another, because I mean, really, like we all just suffer in silence because that is what this settler state tells us to do. That's what it enforces, that you know, that nobody else gives a shit. You're probably all on your own, you know, but we're not. Like our soul wounds, we have to have community and understanding from other people in order to like really heal. And I think that that comes with like being vulnerable and putting ourselves, you know, out there to do that type of healing and that type of healing work.
okay. Nani, you're going to need to, sorry.
No, you're okay.
Um, you're going to need to do something else. Or, there you go. All right. We had a tablet crisis. It
Oh
glitched,
no.
which, is really frustrating in the middle of playing something.
I understand.
You know what I'm gonna do, Nani? Okay. Um. Okay, then right now it's not, okay. Oh, I think you glitched out pretty good. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you. All right,
Okay.
we'll get this going again. Yeah, I think what you said is like, so true. And you know, when I think about this, and we the other card that makes me think of the Empress is the Three of Cups.
The Three of
And like
Cups.
that's so much
Absolutely.
what we need in
A
this
circle.
space
Yes.
is to like, you know, in our life, our other people, our circle, our other, yeah, we need
Absolutely.
them, and we need to be able to really fully express these things.
I completely agree. I think that, this society tells us that we don't need anybody else, but in order to like really have fulfillment in our lives, we have to always like remember that we are just one person and we make up like a huge community. Like we all need one another. And um yeah, we have to stop being afraid to be vulnerable, and we have to stop being afraid to be hopeful. We have to put ourselves out there and be bold in our healing, and we have to heal on purpose. Like these types of soul wounds are not the kind that you just wake up one day and you're like, wow, I feel like better. I haven't thought about that in some time. Like these require us to treat them as if we would like a sick child, like we have to really nurture ourselves and um,
Yeah,
be vulnerable. And it's difficult.
it really is difficult. um I my Empress card, today's future, had a child in here gathering the beauty berries along with you, because I love like those pictures and things. But because like I don't picture the Empress like being an Empress doing their thing all on their own. And
Right.
parenting is often like an aspect of the Empress card, um, which I also included in the today's future interpretation. And like, parenting is like not this alone thing. It's such a communal thing.
It
And
is.
so like for me, like, there's kids in my Three of Cups because like they're part of that. They're part of our circle and part of our closest friends.
Yes, I feel like children are one of the most important parts of today's future, or of the Empress, even too. Like, children are the future. Everything that we do is for the children. Like, I mean, I don't have my kids out here in the garden with me because, I don't want to pull weeds by myself. Like, I have them out here because I know it's important, and children are right there with us, especially as matriarchs. Like I can do anything with a baby on my hip. Like I can strap a baby to me and climb a mountain if I have to. Like I think it's so important. I love that the card has a child. I think it's just so important that our children be a part of it, because they are like the biggest part of it.
This is Melissa. We're talking about these cards. Hanu got a scrape on his bicycle today, and he just took
Oh
the band-aid
no.
off, and so it's sore and it hurts all over again.
Oh no.
Yeah, he's just here beside me.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, buddy. That sucks. Bicycle scrapes are no fun.
Yeah, and it's so hard because like I don't actually ride a bike. I don't know how to ride a bike. I used to know how to ride a skateboard. I stopped and then I got old and anyway,
I I never could do a
so
skateboard.
I don't have the same experiences learning to ride a bike like he does. Although I got many similar skate scrapes learning to ride a skateboard.
Yeah, I never could figure out a skateboard, but I'm pretty good on a bike. I still fall down a lot, but that's okay. It happens.
It does. The idea of falling off a bicycle was always more scary for me though, because it's like so much higher up off the ground than the
Yeah,
tiny little skateboard wheels.
it hurts more too, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I imagine. You crash further to the ground from what I
Yeah,
see.
it's not any fun. I feel like you would go faster too, so it's always like more violent feeling, requires more band-aids. Can you hear me?
Oh, I think we lost your sound. Oh, no, I can. Yeah.
Dang it, the connection is just not working for us. Are you still there?
Okay. Well, since we're having connection issues, let's wrap this up and then I will get a hunt and because he's thirsty now. And but and I'm glad for us and the connection. No, leave her be. And we all know like what our soul wounds are. We don't need to like trauma more in this. Um, but yeah, it's so important to find validation and healing and tears, and the earth is so much a part of that. And thank you for being in my tarot deck and for doing this conversation with me. And I just so appreciate you
Absolutely.
as a friend.
Same, same, same. I've learned so much from you already in my life. I'm just like so thankful that you chose me to be today's future. It just humbles me that I was even a choice. Like I appreciate you, and I've had such a good conversation. I wish that our connection was better, but can you still hear me?
It is what it is. I can. And there's great edit skills. Actually, I don't have great edit skills, but there's great editing programs that will let me take out any bigger, longer pauses.
Oh, that's cool.
But yeah, the recording also remarkably often comes across a lot better than the connection we experience. So I feel
Okay,
good about
well,
it.
that's good. That's
And
good. All right.
all
Well,
right.
thank you so
Thank you
much for
so much for
having
doing
me.
this.
Absolutely. Bye.
You are welcome. And I'll talk to you soon.